Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And it's something to hear that for the last time, isn't it? Thank you for the kind words to everyone today. To the Premier, very gracious words. To my colleagues, generous words. And I would say, I mean, we're often cautioned here to not question the veracity of the statements that our colleagues put forward in the House. But I knew that there was a level of hyperbole going on when they started referencing appreciating my sense of humor. One of the reasons I'm so pleased to have all of these folks close to me here today, but especially it's always important for me to introduce people to my dad so they understand that it's not my fault. There was no way I was not going to be making puns all my life after being raised by Wally. And this is it's a nice little going away party. And it got me thinking about when I was a young man working up in Fort Nelson, BC, flipping eggs and cooking breakfast at the Coach House restaurant. And they threw a going away party for me, a surprise going away party for me. And it was great because it was really a surprise. I didn't even know I was leaving town. Okay, good. I got a laugh out of a first joke. That makes me relax because I'm nervous about this speech. Because if I blow it, that could be the end of my political career. Yeah, it's high stakes. High stakes. Yeah, I got a groan or two. That's really the goal, is what people don't understand, giving me exactly what I wanted. Coming and thinking about the last day, I look back at maiden speech and some of the experiences coming in here, and was laughing at the maiden speech where I shared a story when I was a little older than Abraham, but a debate nerd as well. Briefly and nowhere near as successfully, we had model legislature here in the House, which was really cool. You had to come and sit in these seats as a grade 9 and debate. I think we organized a crossing of the floor. It was intense. But I was also like 14 and a fidgety kid, so I took the old analog microphone apart to see how it worked, and then I put it together again, and apparently it didn't anymore. And my debate coach was so embarrassed about that he stopped coaching debate. And I was telling a friend about this a few years later. Darren Staffen, many of you will know, he was a debate coach, and I told him that story, and he looked at me and he said, "That was you?" Apparently I'd been a cautionary tale for years for young debate students, and maybe I'll remain a cautionary tale after this role as well. I was looking at my first budget response, and at the end of the budget, you just conclude your budget response. You just conclude your remarks. But instead, I said that I would adjourn debate. And Speaker Tucker, your predecessor, was quite flustered about that, because if we'd gone on with that, I would have deprived the people of Saskatchewan hours of riveting responses to the budget. 5 years ago. And those things that were at first, you make those mistakes, you fumble, you flub, were alien, become regular, become something you're used to. Hundreds and hundreds of question period questions. How many introductions of guests, presenting and receiving petitions, statements by members, a few apologize and withdraws along the way as well. It becomes a bit routine. But as my seatmate and I, the member for Douglas Park, Nicole and I often reflect. Every time you get up for question period, every time you get up to give a speech, you still get that bit of a lump in your throat. What is this going to be like? And you get that little bit of nerves because this place matters. And what you say on the record, it matters. And each of us plays for a season or two. But long after we're gone, what we say on the record will still stand. This building will still stand long after everybody here has been laid to rest. That's the permanence. And the importance of what we're doing, because yes, it matters for that history. It also matters because of what the words said in this place can do. What they can do for people alive today and for those who have yet to join us. For what they can change, and at times for what they can preserve and protect, the difference that they make. And that's why I came here. I came to make a difference, just like everybody in this room. We all come to make a difference. I'm going to tell you a little bit about where I came from and why why I do things the way I do, and share a bit of that story. As folks know, I'm a farm kid, grew up on the farm outside of Creval, youngest of 3 boys, Jim and Miles, my older brothers. And we went to school in Moose Jaw after a few years on the farm and going to school in Kildare. Graduated from Vanier and then went on to university and in Saskatoon, studied there, eventually studied medicine. Somewhere along the line, got interested in health and got interested in social justice. And I know that's a term that maybe some folks will turn their noses up at. You know, there's a radio person who calls me a social justice warrior from time to time, like it's a dirty word. But in my faith, in my worldview, in my profession of medicine, that concept that you would be working to make the world more fair and to, in particular, have that preferential option for the poorest, the most vulnerable, there's nothing more important than that. That's exactly what people who are fortunate, the way everyone in here is fortunate, that's what we should be working to do. And I was grateful to be able to study medicine and to work as a family doctor in northern Saskatchewan, mostly Isle of Cross, in Mozambique, in rural Saskatchewan as a locum doc all over the province, and the last several years before I was here, the Westside Clinic, and recently at the Lighthouse and some other work through the pandemic. And I remember having this naive notion when I started seeking to study medicine, trying to get in there, and there's this idea that doctors, their job is to make friends all day. People sit down, they tell you their story, you listen, you try to help, try to make a difference in their life, and in the process, you make a connection. And in many ways, I feel the same about politics. And that's going to sound a little strange right in this building. But what do? But we make friends all day. We go out and connect with people, understand them, and try to have a meaningful connection, mean something in their lives. And as a result, the friends that I have made along the way, it's been incredible, good fortune and joy. I need to say hello to one particular friend who's watching at home, Patrick Schmidt, who is also known as Dirty Schmidt for reasons I'll let him explain. But hello, Patrick. And hello to all the friends who might be watching at home. And I say that about making friends all day in politics and then recognize that, it doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes there is some animosity, and it's not exactly how I'm built. It's not what I come ready to do, is to scrap and fight and separate from others. But I expect the Premier and others might suggest that I've leaned into that element of the job in here. And I guess what I would say is I certainly will not put any apologies on the record about standing up for what I believe in and fighting for people. But I will say that those times when I've confused the people for the politics, when I've made it personal, when we've crossed those lines, I apologize, and I'm sorry. And it's something that we get dragged into in this work. It's hard to avoid. But it's the part that I think none of us like. But yes, Mr. Freaker, that's a good one. Yeah, fun with that one. Making friends all day. That's what medicine was about to me. But at the same time, it was often a source of frustration to be unable to help those friends in a real way. I can give them a medication, I can send a referral, I can be that listening ear, but I send people back into the conditions that make them sick in the first place. And it was really for that reason that I recognized I wanted to change where I was working on health. I wanted to work upstream. And I recognized that we are right now in the biggest, most important hospital in this province. This is the emergency room. This is the operating theater, and theater is part of it. But it is operating theater, it is the ICU, it is where we make the critical life and death decisions. The choices made here make a difference, whether people will be sick or well, whether their lives will be long or short. And I fully believe, and I've said it enough times, but I'll say it again, that our first and foremost primary goal in this House needs to be the health of the people of Saskatchewan. That is why we're here, and we must remember that every day. That, as Virchow said, when we do this work, politics is medicine on a larger scale. So that's why I made that choice to try to practice medicine on a larger scale. At the urging of Mr. Calvert, I threw my hat in the ring for the leadership in 2008, 2009, again in 2013. The Premier described me as having perseverance. Others might have called it stubbornness, or I think my seatmate muttered something about obsessiveness, something along those lines. But, kept at it. Ran in Meewasin in 2017 in a highly contested by-election. And something I always loved about being elected in Saskatoon Meewasin is Meewasin is a Cree word. It means beautiful, and it means good. And every time I think about that, I try to remember that's what we're here to work for, is what's good, is what's true. And then 5 years ago yesterday, I announced that I was going to see if third time was the charm. I ran again for leader, and since a few months after that have served in this role, now for 4 years. And it was quite an experience to be the leader of the New Democratic Party, leader of the opposition. An incredible honor to lead our party through an election, to do all that work of finding candidates and building a platform and being part of that exciting project. And to walk in the footsteps of some folks I really admire. Gus was here. He's made the good sense decision to run out on the speeches and go play with Jeanette, I think, and Ren and Elspeth. But I was showing him around, and he was checking out the statue of Tommy Douglas. And I was telling him about what Tommy Douglas meant and about Medicare and how his leadership changed the province. And what an incredible honor it is to have hung out in an office he spent some time in, to have had a job that he held, and others like Lauren Calvert, Roy Romano, Alan Blakeney, so many who have made incredible contributions in that seat to our province. Now, throughout this time, I've tried to maintain that focus, tried to remember that that's why we're here, health is the primary goal, that that's why I'm in this job. Make sure that whether it's in the policies or the politics, that that's always in mind. And usually when we talk about that concept of upstream, of taking action to prevent illness by the choices we make here, usually we're talking about years down the road. You put more money into early childhood education, you have 10, 20 years down the road, fewer costs, less expensive social programs, and people with better, healthier lives. But what an experience it has been to see in the last 2 years that cycle go from decades to weeks. Choices to have widespread masking on Thursday can reduce transmission by the next Sunday, reduce deaths by the end of the month. Modeling ignored in June can result in our hospitals being overwhelmed in September. And what an incredible thing it has been to live in that compressed time of that upstream factor and the importance of prevention. And what an incredible call to duty. I hate to say opportunity because nobody wanted this, but what an incredible call to action to be a family physician and leader of the opposition in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I know this is a moment where we're being gracious and kind, and I do want to do that, but I do need to be honest. It has been frustrating to be in that role with a government that did not, at least in the way I wanted to see, show evidence of health as the primary goal. Whether from those early days where they named us Dr. Doom and the caucus of gloom, which, it's a pretty good rhyme, to the devastating second waves and the impact in long-term care. The third waves, we all remember being locked here in Regina, ICUs overwhelmed, the fourth wave where we're sending patients out of the province, and the ongoing illness, ongoing loss of life, and how important it is that we look hard at what that tells us, that we learn those lessons. It's why we keep calling for that inquiry into the pandemic response. It's not just the pandemic response. COVID didn't create the problems in our province in long-term care, in our hospitals, in education, in the way we treat the most vulnerable. It revealed them. It exacerbated them. And as the Premier said, if we're all interested in getting to the same goal, we need to be honest about the reality of what that revealed. We need to do the work to learn those lessons. I'm proud of this team and proud to have been part of standing up, standing with science, standing up for health and life. And at times we did. We took tough positions. We made choices that were unpopular, advocated for steps that were needed, but that maybe weren't what people wanted to hear. And, I wear that choice. I understand that. And, as a doctor in the pandemic, maybe was exactly what we needed in the leader of the opposition. But as I said a few weeks ago when I said my eventual intention to move on from this role, I described how early on in the pandemic, everybody wanted a Peloton, those exercise bikes. It was the coolest thing. You're stuck at home. You want a Peloton. And then at the end of things, as things opened up and people were able to get out, the last thing they wanted to see was, the clothes rack that the Peloton had become. They didn't want to deal with that anymore. Maybe it's a bit much of an analogy, but I sort of think I'm the Peloton at this point. People are ready for a new voice, a new face. We can't forget to learn the lessons, but it is time to talk about how we apply them moving forward. And I am excited to see the new Democratic Party of Saskatchewan bring in a new voice. And it is exciting to see we have the first female leader of the party sitting next to me, interim leader. We'll now have the first permanent elected leader, elected by the membership, and my great hope, the first woman to lead this province as Premier. Very excited to see that. And in the lead up to that, I guess it's time for me to get on my Peloton and ride off into the sunset, which I suppose is difficult to do. Maybe I need a skateboard instead. Yeah. Well, it is with mixed feelings that I am making the decision I'm announcing today. Feelings of, yes, some regret, some disappointment. Didn't do all I wanted to do. No one becomes leader of the opposition to stay leader of the opposition. I know none of us will ever achieve all we want to do here, but I know I'd hope to do more. At the same time, I leave with some pride, with real joy, and I know that the building here will continue to be here and the work will continue. And I look at these folks that I got to work with, and Trent, your connections with the farming community and business community, and your deep passion for the issues you represent. Doyle, the way you've spoken up for the community with such passion, and the families affected by suicide, they know where your heart is. Betty, the great work you've been doing on Duty to Consult, so important. Keep that going. Alina, that business leader that you are yourself, and standing up for affordability, and doing so with flair, even a degree of panache. Ms. Saar, a voice for justice, and in particular, I see in you that same voice for the most vulnerable, those who are at greatest risk. Jennifer, the labor critic, and a voice for working people and fair wages and decent conditions. Vicki is our House leader, keeping us doing sometimes the right things here. If up to you, we would do the right things. Otherwise, Trent will pop up randomly for petitions. And your great work as health critic, and it has been so fun to work together as your associate health critic through this time. Carla, I know your work right now is on our party, and how much work you're putting into making sure that party is renewed and has a chance to grow and succeed. To your deep passion for the climate and for keeping the planet, which is the basis of all health. Thanks so much. your voice for the most vulnerable social services critic. It's such a perfect role for you, and you do such a great job. And my teacher friend, so great. The way you speak up for seniors, and the way you speak up for kids in our classrooms, and yeah, you're a great bunch. You're a great bunch, and kind words have been directed at me, but they much more belong in your direction today. I hope we have some. When this building comes back together and the seats are rearranged and there's a new member for Meewasin here, you forget pretty quickly who was here before. I hope something I had to say along the way. Some of the things we got to do together, some of these drums that I've been beating so long, some of that rhythm sticks in your head just a little bit. And I am wrapping up, Mr. Speaker, but I just want to say that I love this province. I love living in Saskatchewan. And sometimes that love is a bit of a love like a brother watching his brother mess up. Wanting us to do better, knowing that we could do so much better. Sometimes there's some frustration in that love because I know what we could be, how we could lead, and I want to see that happen. I don't want to see us. The folks across sometimes accuse us of running the place down. Nothing could be more true. We want Saskatchewan to succeed. We know we can. Failing to acknowledge our shortcomings and failures is the way we don't achieve that. But it has been an incredible honor, and folks have spoken about sacrifice, and sure, there's been a little bit of that, but the reward has been incredible. The joys of this job have been so much. To be a tourist in my own province, the places that we've gotten to see together, up in Hatchet Lake or Fond du Lac, what would have brought me there? Down in Estevan, down in Maple Creek, all over this province, and getting to connect with people, understand people, cruising around drought-stricken areas in the Southwest last summer. It was so powerful to get there. Riding a horse out at Rocanville, seeing the potash mine and learning what's going on there. Being invited into people's homes. Think of joining Doyle and Red Earth Cree Nation and sitting in the living room with the young family, sharing with their grief. Or sitting in the teepee with Tristan or Prescott when they were bringing those important concerns right out there in Wascana Park, walking the picket line with Crown workers. We're scared for how they were going to keep things going. We have shared tears and we have celebrated success. Just as in medicine, we share the sorrows of illness and death. We share the joys of cures and of new birth. It's bittersweet. This whole thing is bittersweet. Do you know what else is bittersweet? Lemonade. And when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. And I've got a great recipe for lemonade. I always have. I think it's probably a family recipe. And that's how I look at life. I have had a chance to live such great adventures in medicine and politics. Health and adventure is kind of all I know. And that's where I'm headed next. Who knows what exactly that will look like, but I know this experience will have done so much to inform the next steps. And I'm so grateful, again, for the kind words and for all of the folks who came to join us and show support today, for my colleagues here, and understanding that the praise is excessive, but nonetheless, I will reluctantly support the motion.